Hello, everyone. This is Jen here, and this is my very first YouTube Live. So please be patient with me as I'm still getting used to it all. I might have a few glitches as we go. I wanted to do today a question period about a question that has been coming up quite a bit, actually, from a few different people lately. And that is, when I receive a message from my spirit guides, should I do what they tell me? Or usually the question comes in as, my spirit guides told me to do this, WTF, what's going on? What should I do with that? And so this one is actually a really important question to me because I think quite often when we start to awaken and we start to receive all these messages from our guides, it's really exciting, and rightfully so. It should be. Our intuition is a very powerful tool. However, we can sometimes fall into this belief system that because we're receiving these messages, they must be from some divine source and we should do exactly as they say and follow those directions. And that can lead us down a bit of a slippery slope because one is that we can be influenced in ways that might not be in our higher good from some of these messages, which I'll explain. But two is I think sometimes, especially in the spiritual community, we fall into a trap of relinquishing our personal responsibility and externalizing it on these messages, on the guides that we're receiving messages from. And so it's not always wise to just do whatever this voice in your head is telling you to do, whatever this guide or being is telling you to do, because just like humans, they are not necessarily a fail safe. They are not necessarily perfection. So they may also have some information that first needs to be digested by our hearts, by our higher selves before we act on it. And I mean, this is something that I have had as a question in my mind before I ever started doing this work professionally, because I wanted to make sure whoever I was talking to was the real deal. I wanted to make sure they were legitimate. I wanted really ensure that if I am receiving messages from guides or lost loved ones or whoever it might be, that there are some ethics behind that information is ultimately in that individual's highest good and the highest good of the people that they interact with. So my question is, and this has been coming up in my meditations lately as well, is how do we know who we're actually speaking with? How do we know if we're talking to Metatron or Archangel Michael or Jesus or our grandfather, that is actually who that is? Because in my experience, in my own meditations, I have had a practice that when guides come forward, I'll ask them to come forward exactly as they are. And I know there's differing viewpoints on this, but for example, I was having individuals that were coming in a very human-like form, which was great and fine. But as I was seeing them, they were almost like a hologram. So it was like their image was going in and out. I could see that there was some kind of projection going on. And so I've become in the habit now of when I see new guides in particular, that I say, I see you. I'm interested in speaking with you. Please know that I am not afraid. You can come in the form that you feel most comfortable in. You don't need to change your form to appease me or to make me feel comfortable. And quite often they will change their form. And so I've been able to see a lot of new shapes and forms and energy. And on that note, they don't all have a human or animal or physical form of some kind to exist. In some dimensions, those beings are just consciousness. They are just thought. They are just energy or light. And so if you happen to see light or you don't see anything at all, you just happen to hear thoughts or feel energy, know that that's not a sign that you aren't doing it right or that you have new skills to learn. It's probably just that you are connecting with beings in a particular dimension, that is how they exist. And so with that information, I have also had some guides come in that just haven't quite felt right. I felt like perhaps there was some deception behind them. And so in those cases, I've done the same thing of, hi, I see who you are. Can you give me your name? Can you tell me where you're from? I'll ask some questions to get some validation. And in some cases, I have actually said to them, I'm having a difficult time trusting you. Are you really that individual? And I have had some instances where they have shifted. It was almost like they took a mask off of their head. And one male energy in particular actually laughed at me and said, "Oh, you're good. I thought I was going to fool you." And I was like, "No, not this time." And so there is this idea that some of our energies or guides that we're communicating with can wear what is similar to like a costume. And so they can use that costume to make us feel safe, to make us feel comfortable. So there is some benefit to it. But they can also use it for the purpose of influencing in a way that perhaps maybe we wouldn't normally go. So there is an opportunity for deception there. Now, not all of us have that experience. A lot of people simply have positive experiences, but it is important to know that there are some other deceptive energies out there. And that doesn't mean that if you see them that you are evil or that you have some darkness in your heart. None of that. It's just important to know that there is polarity. Just like there's polarity on Earth, there are polarity in how we interact with energies. And as you progress down your path, it is quite common to see some energies. It's like you're taking your intuitive skills to another level and you are being tested as you go. So just be aware of that. And that is why it's important to not always trust everything you receive. When I receive information, I like to pull it into my heart and sit with it and see how it feels in my heart and also how it feels in my gut, in my belly. And if it feels calm and it feels right, then I often will act on that piece of information. But if it comes with an energy of anxiety or nervousness or discomfort, I often will not act on that information. I'll hold it a little bit longer. I'll mull it over. I might research it, but I'm not going to act blindly on faith unless I already have an established relationship with that guide. Because our guides are not those higher beings. We want to have a relationship of equality with them, just like we would have that kind of relationship with a human teacher or mentor. We would seek their advice, we would mull it over, we would review it, and then we would choose whether we want to act on that or not. And the other piece of information that's important to note when we're looking at this is that there have been technologies around, I believe since the 1970s, known as voice to skull technology. And if you already know about it, that's fine. I'm going to explain this in very, very simple terms, but it is something you can research if you want to go deeper. And so how I think about it is when we talk to someone on our cell phones, we call them on the phone, they talk into the phone, we receive a message through the phone into our ears, and we're able to interpret it. What voice to skull does is it eliminates the need of the actual cell phone technology. And so someone is able to send messages directly into our mind, and we hear them as thoughts. And it can feel either like they are our own thoughts or like it is another voice. And so my question is, if this technology exists, is it influencing the community in terms of our tuition and telepathy and the messages that we receive? And if that is the case, what is the intention behind that technology and the messages we receive? Now, it could be that this technology is not being used at all anymore, and none of us, we don't have to worry about it. That is possible. But as you know, I like to ask a lot of questions. And so if it does exist, and there is a potential that there are a certain percentage of people and intuitives or psychics who are receiving messages in that manner, where is that information coming from? Where are those messages coming from? And what is their intention behind them? So ethically, I think it's important to ask those questions, to be aware of the possibilities of the different ways that we might be receiving messages and information, and always allow that questioning period, that challenging period, to sit with the message and see how it feels in our heart. Because otherwise, all we're doing is we're taking our power and again, we're putting it in an external place. So we talk all the time about keeping your power and not giving your power away. Well, we're doing the same thing quite frequently in the spiritual community, and I've done it myself. So this is not judgment, but it's something for us to be aware of, in that Our guides are an external source. And what we really want to be doing is finding the information, finding the messages that come from our inner self, from our higher self, from our soul. And we can take in all this information that is outside of us. We can take in the support and love and guidance that comes from our direct spirit team. But just like we do when we go on the internet, we need to discern that information and determine what is our inner truth. What is the truth that we hold on to? And then finally, the other thing I think we need to be careful about when we're taking direction from our guides is that at times it can feel a lot more comfortable to place the responsibility of our words and our actions in the hands of our guides. And again, I have done this myself as well, and I know how easy it is to fall into this, but perhaps we come into a situation where it's maybe a little tricky or it's uncomfortable or socially uncomfortable. And rather than finding what our heart wants to do, what our soul wants to do, and speaking from that place, we'll often say, my guides have told me to do this, or my guides are directing me to this, or I feel my guides are asking me to go in this direction. And while that may be the case, I think it's really important for us as human channels, as human beings, to take that information in from the guides. But ultimately, the decision, the action, our beliefs must be ours. If we are going to create this new world that we all want to create, we don't want to end up in a situation where we have another race, another being, another civilization controlling us again. This is our opportunity to say, I hear you. I like that advice. I'm going to act on it, but it's my decision. At the end of the day, it's my decision. I'm going to be responsible for it. And so I'm going to use that language and that support as well to let others know that I'm making this. This is my soul. This is my higher self stepping forward into this realm to be a leader for myself, for my family, for my community, but also for the team, the interdimensional team that I work with. Because when we're in the third dimension, and I know we're transitioning and all of that to the other dimensions, but Earth is our domain. As humans, Earth is our domain. And so this is where we need to step in to that leadership role in a very heart-centered, mindful way. And so that was a long answer to a short question, but to sum it all up, yes, you should listen to your guides, but it should be encompassed, their advice should be encompassed with your own inner feeling. So take their advice in, but you don't always have to act. In fact, it's good to question. It's good to get into debate, because then we start to have a more equal relationship with our guides. And that is when it gets really good. That's when we start to get some really juicy information and guidance, and we're able to have a relationship of give and take, so we can also support our guides, which is super phenomenal. So I hope that answers some of your questions, and I hope it's helpful. And I look forward to seeing everyone again soon. Thank you for coming out and listening.